The web has always been a pretty powerful place. The collection of sites that we browse through says a lot about our behavior, our identity, our intentions. And recently, the web has gotten even more powerful. New APIs exist that allow sites to know more information about us than they ever have before. Take the geolocation API, for example. If a site knows where I am, it knows where I live, where I work, where I'm traveling to, that's a lot of information for a site to know about me. We should be able to trust that this information, not just sensitive information like your location or your passwords, but information about our behavior is only available to that specific site that we trust. We should be able to know for sure that the websites that we browse to are the same websites that developers have built for us, that they haven't been tampered with by someone on the network. HTTPS gives us these guarantees, and this is why Chrome and the web security community want to move toward a web where HTTPS is everywhere. So why hasn't this happened already? If this protection is so important, why don't all sites just turn on HTTPS right now? Well, it turns out that migrating to HTTPS requires overcoming some challenges that aren't strictly technical. All of the different services that a site depends on must also support HTTPS. So migrations can have complex dependencies. Sites need to check whether all of potentially several ads partners, analytics partners, CDNs support HTTPS. Migrations bring about concerns about maintaining SEO and ad revenue during the change. And so it can be difficult to convince decision makers that this migration is important enough to be worth these challenges. So encouraging HTTPS adoption requires shifts across multiple web ecosystems. And because of these challenges, HTTPS adoption remained low for many years. At the beginning of last year, at Google, we built an HTTPS public transparency report dashboard. It's public, it's updated weekly. And the report shows the HTTPS status of the top 100 sites on the web. And at the time when we released the report, only 39 of the top sites supported HTTPS, and of those, only 24 defaulted to HTTPS. But the good news is that things have changed because people across the web care and have worked hard for change. So browser vendors like Chrome, web developers, server software developers, security researchers, ad networks, and ad agencies, all of these people have come together to make HTTPS a lot faster and easier and cheaper and all around better than it was in the past. And we've seen significant improvements in the top 100 sites that support and default to HTTPS. But we're not all the way there yet. As you can see, there are still top sites that don't support and don't default to HTTPS. So what are some of the changes across the web that have helped bring about this increased adoption? I'll speak about Google, where we formed a group dedicating to understand why existing sites have not migrated to HTTPS, why new sites are not turning on HTTPS. We analyzed some of these changes, and we made changes. We analyzed some of these challenges, and we made changes to mitigate them. So I'll talk through some examples of changes that we're making in Chrome, changes that make the current web safer for our users, and that make the future web safer by encouraging HTTPS. And for that still significant number of sites that have not yet migrated, there are also ways that you, as enthusiasts of HTTPS, can make a difference. So I'll also talk through what you can do to help. OK, so the web has an ecosystem of billions of users and many millions of websites and developers. And this scale means that making abrupt changes to very popular and very widely used features can have large effects and can sometimes actually be pretty difficult or met with a lot of resistance. I really don't like when things I've had for a long time are taken away from me, and neither do web users or web developers. So in Chrome, as we try to move towards a more secure web, what we found to be effective and what we found to be palatable to the web has been to create meaningful change with gradual steps. And to make sure that these changes are meaningful, to determine which steps to take first, we focus on the area with the most immediate security consequences. So I'll explain this with two examples. Our first area where we're making gradual changes to encourage HTTPS adoption is in Chrome's browser UI. So in Chrome, we indicate connection security with an icon in the address bar. And we've changed this icon over time to make migrating to HTTPS easier and to more clearly explain the risks of non-secure HTTP to users. Not so long ago, site owners faced a dilemma when migrating to HTTPS, and that dilemma was around what's called mixed content. Mixed content is the problem when an HTTPS page includes some content over non-secure HTTP. This is undesirable in the long run, but it's pretty standard to see during migrations, and it's important for debugging the migration. And during this process, the site is not fully secured, but it's usually not less secure than before when it was plain HTTP. And in Chrome, we used to indicate mixed content with this little yellow triangle icon. And this little yellow triangle, in my opinion, looks like a scarier security state than our plain HTTP icon, which currently looks like this. And site owners were sad because this meant that transitioning to HTTPS would look like a worse security state with mixed content. So this was off-putting when considering an HTTPS migration. So based partially on feedback from developers, we changed the icon to exactly match our HTTP icon. So fear of users seeing this little yellow triangle would not stop developers from migrating to HTTPS. So our icon for plain HTTP pages and for mixed content currently looks like a circled eye. It's the global sign for information. It's an invitation to click on the icon, and it will pop up more information about the connection. But it does not currently give the user a warning. It doesn't currently communicate the true lack of security for HTTP. And we know that this is a problem because research has shown that users will not just assume that the lack of a warning UI is actually a warning, right? We would like to represent non-secure HTTP sites with this dangerous triangle icon. This is the standard symbol for a warning. You might recognize it from some road signs. And this shape is useful to indicate a warning even to folks who are colorblind. But introducing this icon right away could actually cause harm. When users see warning too many times, they get what's called warning fatigue. This means they stop paying attention to warnings. And we don't want to introduce warning fatigue. We don't want to make the internet seem like a scary place. We don't want people to be afraid of using the web or stop using the web. We're on a mission to be honest with our users without inducing chaos and panic. So we have a plan to slowly introduce browser UI so that we can balance exposure to warnings with gradually increasing honesty about HTTPS. In Chrome version 56, which is actually being released this week, we'll start showing warnings on HTTP pages with password or credit card form fields. As you can see, this string not secure. We chose this as a first step because there's limited user exposure to HTTP password and credit card pages, and because there's a clear security risk to transmitting a password or a credit card over HTTP. And the good news is this isn't just Chrome. Firefox has been showing a warning for HTTP pages with password fields in their developer version for some time now, and will be promoting it to their stable channel to all users. And in the future, we would like to turn on these warnings for a larger and larger subset of pages gradually until we show warnings on all HTTP pages. And in both Chrome and Firefox, we're developing contextual warnings within the autofill suggestion UI, where you'd actually go ahead to choose your password or credit card to reinforce the warning that's shown in the URL bar right at the time when you're actually making that security decision. The second area where we're making gradual change to encourage HTTPS adoption is through restrictions on powerful web features. Chrome wants to drive the web forward, especially the mobile web, and that means bringing new features to the web, features the web didn't have before. And for those features that are particularly powerful, we are requiring that they only be used over HTTPS. An example here is a new API called Service Worker. For those who aren't familiar, a Service Worker is a script that your browser runs in the background, separate from the web page, and it enables things like background sync and push notifications, which are really cool because they allow developers to create offline experiences for websites, similar to an app experience. So service workers are extremely exciting, but they can also do things like hijack connections, fabricate and filter responses. So we consider service workers to be a powerful feature, and Chrome requires HTTPS for service workers. And this is true for a variety of new features, all of which we consider powerful. The web also has many features that have been around for quite some time that were developed at a time when HTTPS was much less prevalent, and requiring HTTPS was really not a possibility. And so in Chrome, we're deprecating support for powerful APIs over non-secure HTTP connections. We're starting with APIs that are most powerful. We deprecated non-secure usage of the geolocation API last year. And next coming up down the pipeline is encrypted media extensions, where we've seen non-secure usage decline. So you might ask, why not require HTTPS for all new APIs? It'll make it easier for yourselves in the future. Or why not deprecate support for non-secure usage for all APIs? Well, for new APIs, this is somewhere we'd like to get to in the future, but we don't want to hinder basic improvements to the web. So for now, we're taking the small step of requiring HTTPS just for powerful new APIs, and we're slowly deprecating support for the most powerful existing APIs. We hope over time that we'll be able to lower the threshold of what we consider powerful to bring us into an era of an even safer web. So I just talked about what Chrome and other web browsers have done to encourage HTTPS adoption. So what can you do as enthusiasts of web security to help us get all the way to a web of ubiquitous HTTPS? So I imagine that many of you probably work at web companies or companies who have a website, right? And maybe your company's site is not HTTPS. Or maybe you have friends or acquaintances, or maybe you have a vast army of Twitter followers who have websites that are not HTTPS. And maybe you've had trouble convincing those people that they should migrate their sites. We actually do quite a lot of this type of outreach to sites that haven't been convinced yet that migrating is a good idea. This outreach is important both to understand the hurdles that sites are facing when migrating, and to actually convince these sites that they should migrate and they should prioritize it above all of the other millions of things that they have on their priorities. And what we found with these conversations is that we must change the way that we talk about HTTPS. There are now real business benefits to migrating. We're no longer in a world where we have to constantly defend HTTPS for being too expensive, too slow. We're now in a world where HTTPS unlocks features that measurably benefit site conversions, A world where HTTPS is required to unlock the best performance that the web offers. And we're now in a world where there are ways to mitigate what were once unavoidable and real expenses to setting up HTTPS. So I'll step through each of these key points to building a business case for HTTPS, and then my hope is that you all can go out and spread this business case to convince non-security-minded people that they should still migrate to HTTPS. So I just talked about the new features of the web platform that are built to require HTTPS, the old features that we're deprecating support for over non-secure HTTP. For these features, we've actually put together case studies that show how effective that they can be for businesses. Here's an example. You can find it online on the Google developer website of Flipkart.com. This is India's largest e-commerce site, and they actually migrated to HTTPS in order to rebuild their mobile site using a bunch of these new technologies like service workers, push notifications, add to home screen, which actually lets you add a website to your home screen so it looks like an app. They've seen a 70% greater conversion rate and 3 times more time spent on their site with this new web app. So these powerful features actually have proven their business benefits, and they're only available over HTTPS. Next, I'll talk about performance. And when we used to talk about performance and HTTPS, we used to talk about it in a completely different way. People used to ask, but won't HTTPS hurt the performance of my site? Won't TLS require extra round trips that will slow down how fast my site loads? It's time to change the way we're talking about HTTPS and performance. HTTPS is required for the best performance available on the web. And okay, it's still true that raw TLS will incur a small performance cost. This cost can be mostly optimized away with improvements like TLS false start, TLS session resumption. And this small cost is really blown out of the water by the performance wins from things like HTTP2. Performance enhancements like HTTP2 become available only when HTTPS is used. These improvements are limited to TLS encrypted connections for very practical reasons, because intermediaries like proxies might otherwise corrupt the traffic using them. The last piece of the business case is about myth-busting perceptions. And this is because HTTPS has been around for a really long time, and it really used to be very expensive to turn on HTTPS. So it's important to make sure that whoever is deciding whether you should migrate to HTTPS knows that the migration no longer really has to cost you a lot of money. 2 ways that it's traditionally been expensive are certificate pricing and ads revenue. To turn on HTTPS, you have to get a certificate, and traditionally you had to buy one from a certificate authority. But the good news is you really no longer have to buy one. The web certificate ecosystem has changed. One example is Let's Encrypt, which is a free and automated certificate authority that even provides command line tools to make renewing your certificates easy and automated. And here's a graph. It shows the incredible growth of Let's Encrypt over just the past year. There's also platforms like WordPress and Squarespace that are using Let's Encrypt to give free automated certificates at scale to even custom domains, which is pretty cool. Another piece of the revenue story is ads. Because historically, sites were afraid of losing ad revenue when migrating to HTTPS, afraid that their ad partners would refuse to support or didn't yet support HTTPS. And ad support for HTTPS really was once a huge issue, but because of work done across the ads ecosystem, the situation is really now much better. Here's a graph of just HTTPS support at Google, just for requests to Google's ad servers. And this blue line has significantly increased over the past 3 years. You can see in 2014, we had very low HTTPS support, and now the story is much better. But of course, this isn't just about Google Ads. This is a trend we're seeing across the ads ecosystem. So using these three arguments, you can have successful conversations to show that migrating to HTTPS can be about the business benefits. It's not simply just about the security benefits. Of course, moving to HTTPS can still take resources. It takes planning, it takes time, it takes engineers. And although many online ecosystems have progressed tremendously in their HTTPS support, there are still third parties that many sites depend on that really don't have great support. My hope is that as the web transitions, the support will continue to get better. And if you do run into a provider that doesn't have easy and cheap HTTPS support, I encourage you to ask them why not. So HTTPS migrations have become easier, and adoption has improved because people believe that HTTPS should be everywhere, and people have made changes in favor of HTTPS adoption. I just told you about some changes in Chrome that make the web safer, and that we hope improve overall HTTPS adoption. But remember that we're not all the way there yet. If you work at a company with an online presence, your site's still HTTP, go out there and start planning what it means for your sites to migrate. You can use this business case that I outlined, and we have more case studies online. There are tons of blog posts from sites that have migrated and have documented their experiences. Gradual changes can make a difference, and if we continue working together, we can continue to make the web easier to use securely by default. Thank you. That's it.